This rather barren patch of riverside in Eagle Pass, Texas, has become a national talking point. Behind me, you can see the Rio Grande, and beyond that, Mexico. It's one of the areas where migrants in their thousands have been crossing illegally to get into the United States, creating a major political row back in Washington, where Joe Biden is under pressure to pass new border security measures.
It's crystal clear his policy choices and Secretary Mayorkas' refusal to comply with the law are driving this border catastrophe.
The defences you can see here, the razor wire and floating barriers in the Rio Grande, have been set up by Greg Abbott, the Republican governor. Mr. Biden's administration has challenged many of those measures in the courts, arguing that it's up to his federal government, not individual states, to set policy on border security. But with illegal migration set to become one of the defining issues of November's election, we're here in Eagle Pass to speak to people who actually live here, to ask them what it's like at the heart of America's border war. On Thursday, the Texan border played host to the two men who were battling it out for president in November's election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
They like Trump. Can you believe it? The United States is being overrun by the Biden migrant crime. It's a new form of vicious violation to our country. It's migrant crime. We call it Biden migrant crime, but that's a little bit long, so we'll just leave it. But every time you hear the term migrant crime, you know where that comes from.
Here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together. You know and I know it's the toughest, most efficient, most effective border security bill this country has ever seen.
Amber Duncan lives just metres from the river. She's seen the impact of illegal migration firsthand. Her husband was deported, and now she must walk across the bridge to Mexico each week to meet him.
You know, a lot of people call it a prejudice, or, you know, they say it's a racist thing. They don't want immigrants coming. They don't like immigrants. I mean, that's not the case. My husband was an undocumented immigrant for 20 years. Up until 2018, they did a massive deportation. I had to accept the fact that my husband was eventually going to get deported. That's what brought me here. And, you know, when you live here, you have a different mindset. You know, I've got to walk that bridge every Friday, hauling groceries, 5 kids. You know, it's a big adjustment.
Amber's also seen the darker side of border enforcement. Her own children were almost snatched accidentally by the border force while waiting for their school bus.
There was a time my kids are waiting on the bus stop. The immigrants got mixed up with my kids. Very embarrassing. They almost got my kids and scooped them up into the van. Good thing I was out here, you know, and I'm always out here by the door watching. But yes, it's scary.
For Claude Wilson, who drove 2 hours from his home on Thursday morning to see Donald Trump speak at Eagle Pass, the border is a defining election issue. He says he wants to see Trump back in office next year to finish his attempts to crack down on illegal migration in a second term in the White House.
It really distresses me to see so many people allowed into our country that we know nothing about. And I'm all for lawful immigration, but we have people who are coming under the wire, sneaking around, hiding. We have people who say, I'm looking for asylum, and they turn around and say, I'm really looking for a job, and I'm afraid in so many cases they'll find crime, and we find crime in our streets. You can see my shirt. It says no more Biden nonsense. We had Bidenomics, and it hadn't worked. Donald Trump had it under control, and my goal is to see that Donald Trump is elected president.
But for others, debates over border security are just a distraction from the real issues America faces. We caught up with Steve Fisher, who's in charge of defending those prosecuted under illegal migration laws. He says that Greg Abbott's crackdown, codenamed Operation Lone Star, is targeting the wrong people.
We're in charge of defending the felonies. We don't do the misdemeanors of people that are charged with smuggling. But we're not getting these cases of fentanyl or weapons smuggling. None. You know, we're getting what happens is some 20-year-old kid, you know, with very little education, someone who's making minimum wage, someone comes up and says, hey, can we use your truck? Can we give these people a ride for a couple hours and we'll give you $200 a person? You know, and then they get busted 10 years to serve in prison is what they're going to be charged with. It's just crazy. And It costs taxpayers so much money, and every study that's non-biased shows that immigrants, legal or not, commit less crimes than native-born Americans. There's so much prejudice.
Neither the illegal crossings nor the political row that they've generated look like they're going to end anytime soon. What we have seen is a community of people who never wanted a national spotlight. They don't want to be worrying about their own safety or the fate of the dozens of migrants who've drowned in the river. The politicians are still battling it out on how to resolve this situation peacefully. But for now, that settlement seems very far away indeed.